Hello everyone, this is Pendy.
And this is Paul, also known as EastX Twitch.
EastX, I've learned a new spell!
Oh goddess, it's not frizzy, is it? I really don't need you randomly turning my oven on for no reason.
No. I've learned Hocus Pocus.
Oh, that's much more useful. But isn't that spell very random in what it does?
Well, yeah, but that's the fun of it. Here, I'll try it out. Hocus Pocus!
Whoa, did we just get zoomed somewhere?
I think so. This all looks, strangely familiar, though.
Who's that over there?
It's time for the tip of the day! Tip of the day!
That's right, all you tacticians. Did you know?
Oh wow, we didn't just zoom through space, we zoomed through time and space. We're back in an old Tactfully Die episode.
Oh no, my wallet can't afford any more Dragon Quest Tact. Get us out of here.
Hocus Pocus!
Thank goodness we're back. I was afraid the spell was going to make more random trouble for us.
You might want to take a look in the mirror there.
What? Oh no, why do I look like Mindini, the tact mascot that you're strangely attracted to?
Well, hey, at least you look pretty in pink, but it could be worse. You could look like Pinky the Dracky from The Adventure of Die, A Hero's Bonds. Rawr.
And would it be good for our working relationship? But this is still unacceptable. Oh well. While we figure out how to change me back to normal, I'll welcome everyone to Alltrades DQ Media Abbey, a Slime Time podcast spinoff where we review various Dragon Quest media, including manga and anime.
We are currently reviewing a Dragon Quest-inspired parody show called The Hero Yoshihiko and the Dragon Quest X tie-in manga, Rooming with a Gamer Gal. We'll start with Yoshihiko first. We gotta seal those monsters away.
And we begin with Season 2, Episode 8. In this episode, the party has decided to return to Dharma Temple to change jobs again. Danjo chooses the martial artist job. Murasaki once again becomes a mage. Melub decides to go the goof-off route. Yoshihiko chooses to do the priest job so that he can one day be a sage. Next, the Great Buddha informs them that they must go to the village of Moonpota to find a teleportal where an evil presence is lurking. He also informs them that a great evil is searching for the same key that they are seeking. Upon entering the village, the team splits up. Murasaki encounters a talking dog that tells her about Elf, a man who knows where the teleportal is. When she speaks to Elf, he mentions two teleportals. One goes to a random house in the town of Papara, the other should be the one they're looking for. While Yoshihiko is still out on his own, the rest of the party decides to hurry and go defeat the monster in the correct teleportal without their leader. However, the portal doesn't lead to an evil monster, it actually takes them to a casino where people bet on slime races. The team eventually discovers that the main prize is a golden key, and they manage to win it. Meanwhile, in the teleportal that Yoshihiko passes through, our hero encounters a woman named Flona, who suffers at the hands of her abusive husband. Yoshihiko repeatedly visits Flona while her husband is out, and, inadvisably, he starts to develop feelings for her. Eventually, Yoshihiko and Flona decide to run off together. They even break into a song about it. But when the bad husband finds out about their affair, he and the smitten hero face off in another musical number. Before the fight can actually start, however, Murasaki knocks Yoshihiko out from behind. She then casts a spell that causes the husband and wife to fall back in love and makes the husband start treating his wife well. That's better. Finally, Yoshihiko gets reset by the Buddha, Arg, and the party moves on.
The opening bit of this episode features an entertainer bandit who can supposedly read minds. Unfortunately for him, he's a little bit of a half-ass entertainer in his Dispatched by Yoshihiko sword. I really enjoyed his shenanigans, and I thought it was especially funny how when he's put to sleep, he still has his finger pointing in the air, gesturing about his performance, and has his eyes wide open as he snores. Next, they all talk about their new jobs they got at Dharma. I appreciated they mentioned the Dragon Quest mechanic where learning basic jobs can eventually lead to advanced jobs. In particular, Yoshihiko hopes to be a sage. I also loved Murasaki's and Danjo's reaction to Melub deciding to be a goof-off, or gadabout as the job is now localized. Their snide reactions are perfect. In the Buddha section of the episode, my favorite part is the fourth wall break. Buddha realizes he's taking too long and doesn't want this segment of the show to be cut. And when they reached the village and split up later, I love Murasaki's little RPG adventure where one clue leads to another. She does something ordinary for the talking dog, it leads to finding Elf, and so on. The teleportals the team finds are fun to see because they look very similar to the NES Famicom style teleportals. They even make a similar wavy sound effect when used in the show when the party goes through them. Now, the name of the wife Yoshihiko meets by going into one of the teleportals is Flona, which is probably probably a play on Flora from Dragon Quest V. As we've pointed out before, the show likes to use Dragon Quest names and change them just a bit. If you don't recognize the name Flora, that's because that name was localized in English as Nera. Probably one of the more annoying name changes in the series for me personally. Flora is supposed to be the most feminine of the Dragon Quest V wives, and I think Nera doesn't serve that purpose as well. They decided to go with Nera since it means the color black, where Bianca means white. It's an instance where I think the translators are trying to be too clever for their own good and enhance something in the game which really doesn't need it. The name change even carried over into the Your Story movie. Using it in the dub, I can somewhat understand, but it's odd when you watch it in Japanese with English subtitles because you repeatedly hear the characters say Flora, but the subtitles say Nera. The movie even gets awkward with town names when what they should be called is shown on a map in English, but then the subtitles use the official game localizations, which is something else entirely. Sorry for the side rant. Unnecessary name changes in localizations just have always annoyed me, and it just makes for unnecessary confusion if it carries on into other future projects.
The localization names, the real problem with that movie is the stupid ending that's ripped off from the Lego movie. We spend an hour and a half with these characters, and then you're going to tell us that they're not real and that Dragon Quest is super special? We already know that, you filmmaking jerks. Ah!
But they're real in our hearts, Eastex. They're real in our hearts. I know, you love to rip on that movie. But on a much more positive note, I absolutely love that they used slime races here. The little expressions that they drew on the racing slimes in the show were terrific. This was a minigame that first showed up in Dragon Quest V. You can also find it in Dragon Quest X, and they even made a slime racing board game at one point. Who doesn't like seeing little slimes racing around? In this gambling house where people can bet on slimes, we see our first appearance of a bunny girl in the show. It's one of the three women who distract Danjo. When he busts out the English word shekshi in his Japanese accent, I couldn't help but laugh. Go get some, Danjo. I don't blame you. In the other part of the story, we have Yoshihiko dealing with an abused wife. Now, to be honest, this kind of took me aback as it seemed a little too dark for this kind of comedic show, especially when the husband pins Flona's head to the floor with her foot. I don't know, just like the way he slaps her around and does all that, it was just, I thought it was a little too much for this type of show, but maybe that's more of a cultural thing or it's more acceptable in like a Japanese comedy show. I don't know. As Yoshihiko has his affair with Flona, it transforms into a musical of sorts. I wasn't sure how I felt about that at first, and it's something that they had done before, but then when it ended up being built up just to get Yoshihiko bonked on the head mid-song, I was all in. Murasaki decided that they didn't have time for that crap and basically ruined the musical. It was a lot of fun to see. Also, this episode has a pretty good bit at the end with Yoshihiko's sister trying out another style of fighting to go save her brother. And of course, she gets knocked out from behind and dragged off like she always does. But it's particularly comical because her drunken master in this scenario is right behind her, sees her get knocked out, and decides, he doesn't care either way. Overall, a really great episode that I enjoyed. Helpful talking dogs, slime races, and ruined musicals. A perfect mix.
Now then, this episode is introduced by a peeper, a monster with a giant eyeball that takes up most of its head, and also two skinny legs and tiny T-Rex-like arms. The peeper's Japanese name is Spectuto. In Dragon Quest IV, the game where it first appeared, Spectuto was translated as Spectate. The Japanese name is a play on spectate, so that's kind of clever. The Spectuto is purple in some games, as it is in the show, and red in others.
Yes, I looked into that myself, and they just don't seem to be able to decide what color they want this monster to be. It's not that it's separate monsters that have different color palettes, because like there's other versions of the Spectuto. There's a blue one that's called, in English, it's called the Winky, but this is all the same monster that's been in a lot of different games. It started out as red in Dragon Quest IV, and then when they got to Dragon Quest VIII and they used it again, it's still the same monster, same Japanese name, but now they colored it more purple, but then they keep going back and forth. Like some games, it goes back to red. There's a Turnico game where it's purple. There's mobile games that come afterward where they turn it back to red. They can't decide on what color they want this monster to be for some reason. It's hilarious.
That is tricky. I was surprised that the party returned to Dharma Temple in this episode, even though they didn't actually show the actual visit. Dharma Temple is called Alltrades Abbey in modern game translations, as we mentioned before, and that name inspired the name of our podcast show.
Woohoo!
As for the class changes, it makes sense for Melub to become a gadabout since he's so goofy in general, and his spells rarely help anyway. In fact, Danjo asks him, how much goofier do you mean to become? That line is perfect. For people who don't know, gadabouts, or goof-offs, are a difficult class to play in Dragon Quest because they will randomly choose to goof off instead of following the player's orders in battle. They have some good skills to earn in Dragon Quest III HD 2D, however. In the show, we get to see Melu goof off when he insists on staying and gambling on the slime races. Those colored slimes look cool, by the way, and I wish the show had allowed us to watch a whole race.
Oh, that would have been fun.
For real. As for Yoshihiko becoming a priest, that supposedly explains why he's unable to resist helping Flona. However, Yoshihiko never passes up a chance to help anyone, so the class-based explanation isn't necessary. Yoshihiko becoming a priest and sage is funny because he has such low intelligence. That might be why the party acts surprised when they hear about his class choice. In actual Dragon Quest games, it should be noted, the hero can't change classes. Because of this, some people choose to replace the hero with another party member in Dragon Quest III HD 2D. General party members can outclass the hero once they've mastered the skills of all the other classes.
But of course, you can't dump the hero until the postgame.
Exactly right. Getting to the Flona subplot, I agree that the abusive husband is surprisingly cruel to poor Flona. I feel sorry for her. Not only is she really nice and humble, but her actress is super cute. Shame it's so hard to find proper acting credits for the side characters. Couldn't figure out who she is.
Oh.
Anyway, I groaned when the characters started singing since it's very similar to Yoshihiko's romance from a previous episode. Yoshihiko even tells the party that he's leaving them for the girl again. However, when they start pointing out that he's doing adultery and he defends adultery as cool, that is new and very funny.
Yeah, that whole scene is just wild when he's trying to defend adultery. He's like, no, adultery is the way to go. And they're like, do you know what you're saying right now?
Yeah, exactly. It's so absurd, and that just brings a lot of comedy.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that knocks this episode down a notch for me is the ending. How many times are they going to erase Yoshihiko's memory so they don't have to deal with a new status quo? It's a cop-out, a way to save the writers from having to think of new solutions and situations. It also diminishes Yoshihiko as a character if he can just be overwritten all the time. Oh well, at least the episode was fun up until the end.
See, for me, because it's such a wild comedy that it is, I don't mind it that much for them to be able to reset like that. And plus, they use it in comedic ways as well. For example, when they did the whole joke with the save states, like, oh, we need to go back to a different save, like that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's clever the way they do that. So I like that.
Yeah, they just don't need to overdo it.
That's true. That's true. They do go back to resetting Yoshihiko a lot. But he's so dumb sometimes. It's almost like they have to, because, oh, here he goes again. We got to reset him, because otherwise it's not going to work.
He's a silly dude.
Yep. But next is season 2, episode 9. We begin this episode with the heroes encountering ominous smoke in the distance. So they summon the Buddha to give them guidance. The Buddha explains that the god of darkness, Destark, has obtained the key of evil spirits. The team must venture to the village of Astes to forge an armor to protect them from Destark's power. In Astes, they find Morgan, an inventor whose family has passed down the process of making the armor. They need to obtain the legendary mineral, orichalcum, to make it, and it's guarded by a forest demon on a mountain to the west of town. During their mountain trek, the team faces a series of weak monsters and incompetent bandits before encountering the dreaded forest demon, a small but ferocious hamster. They defeat the hamster and obtain the orichalcum from a special shrine. Next, after having obtained the legendary armor, our heroes venture to the underworld. Yoshihiko's sister does not get knocked out for once in her quest to help her brother, so she follows them down to the underworld. As they get their bearings and start to discuss where to go look for Destark, Yoshihiko and friends are forced to dodge a gigantic fireball hurled at them from an unknown foe.
This episode is introduced by another monster that hasn't shown up during an episode yet, a Rector. In Japan, Rector is called Akuma Shinkan, which means devil priest. Rector is a clever play on words, since the word rector with no W is a type of clergyman or priest in English, and the guy carries maces, so he can wreck his enemies with them. But the show's Rector is no ordinary Rector. He's the unique Dragon Quest V variant that has no horns. It seems that in every other game since his first appearance in Dragon Quest II, the Rector has worn 2 red horns atop his black and white head. For some reason, he has no horns in 5, which makes him closely resemble the Envoy, a very similar enemy who wields a staff instead of maces. Anyway, the 5-style Rector in the show is played by an actor inside of a big, puffy red and white robed costume that tries to emulate the character's wide shape. Only the guy's green-gloved hands and arms are exposed. Everything else is hidden within the bulky costume. Certainly authentic, but I'll need to see it in motion before passing proper judgment on the costumes quality. Woo! That was a lot of talk about something that only appears for 4 seconds in the episode.
No, that's okay, because that happens to be one of my favorite monsters in all of Dragon Quest. I just love the design of Rectors. The evil-looking priest with the 2 maces, it just looks so ominous and cool.
I like him too.
Yeah.
This episode's Buddha segment is one of the funnier ones. The Buddha is so thoroughly off task and distracted while the heroes try to talk to him. Also, he initially doesn't know that they can hear him playing Mahjong, and he does a triple take when he realizes they're there. You know, he's like, what? The goofy Buddha reads the latter part of his segment out of a notebook that someone else is holding up for him, which Melub refers to as reading from cue cards. Good stuff. This episode includes several different bandit encounters, including a woman who won't fight until she applies her makeup, a guy who boasts about defeating various supposedly famous people that the heroes have never heard of, and a guy who starts transforming into a werewolf but can't finish because clouds end up covering the moon. They're all pretty entertaining.
I think the werewolf guy was my favorite. The fact that he was interrupted mid-transformation, and then he's like, can I come and fight you later when my transformation is over? And Yoshihiko says, sure, buddy. Yeah, we'll let you do that. Can we go ahead and go by for now? It's like, yeah, sure. I just thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, that was a really funny idea. Morgan the inventor is the guy who ends up making the armor for them, right? Well,
Yes.
His creations include an automatic table flipper, a Jonken victory decider, and a super rice maker. The table flipper is kind of redundant since the user has to exert the same amount of force to operate the lever that it would take to flip a table manually. The Jonken victory decider decides who wins in matches of rock, paper, scissors, or Rochambeau as the translators call it. The thing is, the machine actually relies on the operator to decide the winner rather than deciding on its own. The operator rotates a handle to raise a flag for player 1 or player 2, and that's it. So largely pointless. As for the super rice maker, it takes 5 years to make super good rice. The rice that coincidentally just came out of it is only totally average rather than super though, so that's a bust as well. Seems like Morgan isn't a very good inventor, but he does end up making the legendary armor for the heroes. The armor creation happens totally off screen after they get the orichalcum. We only briefly glimpse the armor as our heroes carry it in pieces, but it's silver with a red jewel in the center of the chest piece. The design seems to be closely based on the auroral armor, also known as Erdrick's armor, from Dragon Quest III and several other games. One big difference is that the auroral armor is blue, not silver like this armor in the show.
Oh, good catch. I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at pictures of armor from all the different Dragon Quest games, you know? And just as far as I can tell, that's the closest match.
Nice.
By the way, the orichalcum needed for the legendary armor is guarded by a vicious hamster. The writers used yet another vicious cute animal for this segment. It's funny, but starting to get old after seeing the same joke 3 or 4 times already.
Yeah, same for me. The only defense of this instance of the joke that at least somewhat amusing is that Danjo every time has been like, oh, this is cute. This won't hurt me. And he drops his guard and then he gets attacked. The other characters comment on the fact that Danjo falls for this gag like every time. So that comment was a little amusing. But yes, I hope they don't keep doing this constantly because this is the 3rd time.
Yeah, if I had to guess, just like with the memory overriding thing, the show had to be made in a relatively short period of time. So sometimes the writers just have to go back to things that they know works instead of, coming up with something better.
And at least this time they had like a extra joke to add to it about Danjo. So I at least give him points for that a little bit.
Yeah, agreed. Finally, we get a cameo of Konpachi, the teacher who lives in Sakura Village. The team ends up in Sakura Village as a result of Murasaki's Hocus Pocus spell, which ends up working as Zoom, the spell that sends the team back to places they've already visited. Konpachi is one of my favorite incidental characters, so it was great seeing him again.
But it was a different actor, so that was funny.
True. I guess they couldn't get the original guy back.
Yeah, they just got some other random guy. Probably was cheaper that way. It's a low budget comedy adventure, as they say in the credits. So
agreed.
In the beginning of the episode, it's fun to see the Buddha being distracted by playing Mahjong, like you had pointed out before. Mahjong is a game played with special tiles that was originally developed in China. Coincidentally, my wife has recently started to learn how to play the game. I remember early computers would often have Mahjong preloaded along with other games like Minesweeper and Solitaire for you old folks out there. I've played around with the game when I was a kid, but never really learned how it worked. My dad's girlfriend is also a big fan of the game. There are many groups that play it in Florida, where we all are now, especially among the retired community, though she primarily lives in upstate New York. When she went back there after learning the game in Florida, it was hard for her to find other players at first. But it turns out that Mahjong is very popular in Jewish communities. Now, she's not Jewish, but was welcome to play it there in the Jewish as community centers, so she made some new friends. So that was great. Now back to the show. I know Maylube jokes about Morgan, the inventor, embodying every mad inventor type trope, but I got a strong Doc Brown from Back to the Future vibes from Morgan's look. And based on one of Morgan's useless inventions, Yoshihiko implies that stubborn old men tend to flip over tables in Japan. I did not know that was a stereotype there. That was amusing. I love the whole bit about Maylube openly referencing Dragon Quest X and how everyone else is clueless about what he is talking about. It comes up when they encounter a group of monsters that debuted in Dragon Quest X, the Bushy Baby and the Soft Serve Spook. This season of Yoshihiko first aired around the same time that Dragon Quest X was initially released, so it makes sense. During this trek to the mountain, we find out that the mysterious spell that Murasaki cast last episode to save the battered wife was actually Hocus Pocus. Just like in the games, Hocus Pocus will give you random effects. In the games, it first debuted in Dragon Quest II. It's famous for doing good or bad effects for your party, but it wasn't until 3 when you could randomly have something bad happen to you as well, like the spellcaster getting paralyzed for 3 turns. The spell is in a lot of Dragon Quest games, and it's even one of the hero's abilities in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I have heard people who play Smash tournaments don't like the character because Hocus Pocus adds too much randomness to the fights, but I've always thought the Smash tournament community was pretty silly, to be honest. They do everything they can to not deal with the randomness of Smash, such as playing without items. And randomness is half the fun of the game, so I don't know. I think they take themselves too seriously. When the party is still trekking during the night, I love that Danjo is worried that the monsters they may encounter will be too strong. That's a reference to how in games like Dragon Quest III that have a day-night cycle, monster encounters at night are more dangerous. The spell called Frizzy that Maylube learns in this episode has to be the most useless spell he has ever come up with by far. And of course, Yoshihiko is hilariously impressed with it. Toward the end of the episode, Yoshihiko's party and his sister wander down to the underworld. It's called Nadiria when you encounter it in Dragon Quest IV and V. The show uses Dragon Quest V style graphics again to depict this journey. I always enjoy when they do this method to show scenes like this. I can never get enough of something like that in this show. Speaking of Yoshihiko's sister, like we mentioned earlier, she doesn't get knocked out for once and follows her brother. This time, she looks like Kenshiro, the main character of Fist of the North Star. Now, I doubt they'll show her exploding the bodies of enemies like they do in the manga and the anime. I bet she'll even be depicted as some other kind of fighter in the next episode, so we'll see. On a final side note, it's fun that they were giving away free copies of the ending theme song through a contest that was advertised when the show aired. I like when shows do contests like that. Gets the audience involved and people get to win something, possibly. Not a bad episode overall, with an interesting cliffhanger. I'm very interested to see what this Destark looks like, since his name is an obvious play on the boss monster Estark from various Dragon Quest games.
Now we move on to Rooming with a Gamer Gal, the Dragon Quest X inspired manga. In Server 54, Announce the Marriage to the Family Quest Grow Side Part 1. That's our first chapter. This chapter starts with Miyako enjoying a day off playing Dragon Quest X. We get a look into her daily routine in the game, looking for quests, watering fields, and beating bosses for orbs to sell for money. While Miyako decides to work on her alternate character, she gets a surprise visit from her good friend, Ayano. She has come to check up on Miyako and drop off some wedding presents. Miyako informs her that she's going over to her parents today to announce her marriage plans. After Ayano leaves, Miyako heads to her dad's house, where her brother and sister-in-law are also visiting. Miyako announces the marriage plans, but her dad proclaims in dramatic fashion that he won't approve the marriage.
To start this server off, I love the cover panel image of Goro standing with her arms folded next to a very armored up Pal in Dragon Quest X. At least I assume that's Pal. It's cute seeing a little poppet armored up like that. Early in this server, Miyako says, playing Dragon Quest first thing in the morning on a day off. Is there anything better? No, there is not, Miyako. I totally agree with you there. It's fun to see her go through her typical daily interactions in Dragon Quest X. It's interesting they mentioned the ability to sell access to certain hunts. I wonder how they go about selling that access. Can you just hand over in-game currency to people in the game as gifts? And I think in a later server, they discussed that where someone was going to retire from Dragon Quest and somehow give the money to Satsuki, so maybe you can. But I'm not really sure 100%. Hopefully they don't use real money to do something like that. That would be somewhat scummy, in my opinion. Now, it's fun to see East X's favorite waifu, Ayano, show up again. And it's even more hilarious that her worry about her parents being upset about marrying some random nobody ends up to be true. I enjoyed seeing Miyako's family. We finally meet her brother that she mentioned before, and especially her dog Goro that shares the same name as her Dragon Quest character. Is her dad really upset, or is he just being overly dramatic? He did give that impression throughout that he is that kind of overdramatic type of person, so we'll see. Very soon.
Any chapter with Ayano is a good one. I mean, you pointed out to me privately that she's no Mindini, but she's the next best thing. The closest thing Ayano does to being sexy in this chapter is joking that she wants to marry Miyako. That part is funny and cute. Our introduction to Miyako's family is exciting. Maybe she mentioned in passing that her parents are divorced, but I'd totally forgotten. The manga team certainly did a great job of making Miyako's dad a fun and memorable character. He jokes around a lot and wants attention. A man after my own heart. We don't get much of the brother and sister-in-law just yet, other than learning that brother-san cooks and sister-san is quite pregnant. In the version of the comic that I read on Manga Toto, there's a panel during Ayano's visit with an empty dialogue bubble. Surely a translation error. You looked up the panel on Manga Pendy, and it has Ayano saying, "Do you have any plans today? If not, would you like to get something to eat? Thanks, dude."
You use this Manga Toto app, and I'm wondering if that's like some kind of bootleg type of deal. Because I know the Manga Up is the official app that is owned by Square Enix, who's the publisher. So I'm guessing that's why you may see some screw-ups from time to time.
Yeah, now it's funny because the translation seems to be the same between both apps, but it's like mine is an incomplete version sometimes or something.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
But hey, it lets me read the comic, and that's the important part. This chapter strikes a good balance between Dragon Quest X discussion and real-world interactions. One thing I found interesting is when Miyako considers fighting Scorpide. Scorpide, which can also be translated as Scorpider, which I like better, is a super boss that looks like a red scorpion with a humanoid top half, like a scorpion centaur. It wields a staff, and the reward for beating it is a ruby feather. I hope we get to face off against Scorpide in an officially localized game someday.
Next is Server 55. Announce the marriage to the family quest. Goro side, part 2. We find out in the beginning of this server that Miyako's dad was only joking about refusing to accept the marriage. They go on to discuss how Miyako and Satsuki probably won't have a formal ceremony. Later on, Miyako visits her mom at the shop where she works. Her mom is fine with the situation as long as Miyako feels Satsuki is important to her. Because of her mom's personal situation, she reminds Miyako that, she can go ahead and just get divorced later if it doesn't work out. She's happy that her daughter has met someone nice, but is shocked to learn that Satsuki is the roommate that Miyako told her about before. Scandal. People of the opposite sex living with each other. We end the server with Miyako relaying the results of her announce the marriage to the family quest to Satsuki.
I'm glad that we meet Miyako's mom in this chapter. I didn't know who she was at first, but then she refers to herself as Miyako's mom in the third person. Her mom has short hair and a masculine build, so I almost mistook her for a dude. Still, she seems nice enough. She mentions that she left Miyako's dad because he was messy and always threw his socks on the floor. My stepdaughter is like him in that respect, so I sympathize.
Oh, are you going to ditch your stepdaughter then? You're out of this house. No more socks on the floor. I'm sick of it.
Yeah, I will never understand how some people can't just put things where they go. It's not like it changes, you know?
Exactly.
I don't care much for dogs, but Miyako's dog, Goro, is pretty cute in this chapter. I'm glad Satsuki shows up at the end of the chapter also. He admits that he has always felt like a background character in other people's lives and can hardly believe his good fortune in finding Miyako. She's extremely supportive, which is nice. With some people, if you admit your anxieties to that extent, they get put off by it. I told a girl I was nervous once, and that seemed to make her lose interest in me. She wasn't as cool as I thought, even if she did know martial arts.
The opening panel of this server explains you can explore the world of Dragon Quest X with a dog by your side. I want a dog. I'm a dog person, unlike East X apparently. I would totally do that if I played the game. In fact, I hear there are a whole range of different types of companion pets you can obtain these days in the game. As I mentioned before, we do find out that Miyako's dad was being a jokester about his declaration of disapproval. During these two servers, the back and forth between Miyako and her dad has been quite entertaining. Miyako's mom, on the other hand, brings up Miyako having to put herself in Satsuki's family register. I looked it up, and this family register is called the Koseki. It's used to record births, deaths, marriages, divorces, and even used to establish where you reside. It acts as a proof of citizenship in Japan. In Japan, one person in a married couple must give up their family name to the other. As of now, unlike in America, there is no option for both people to keep their family name, and usually the women in Japanese society are the ones that give up their name. I noticed Miyako's mother's shop had a sign that mentioned handmade Zaka, Z-A-K-K-A. Apparently, Zaka is a special Japanese term for handmade miscellaneous goods. So we can see who Miyako probably gets her creative genes from. In these two servers, it's been fun to get to know Miyako's family. Now we get to see Satsuki's family.
And that takes us to Server 56. Announce the marriage to the family quest. Powder Side, Part 1. That name rolls right off the tongue. Now we switch over to a day in Satsuki's life when he has a day off to play Dragon Quest X. He's a little little more casual than Miyako, but still decides to get together with Moist to tackle a newer super boss. Good old Moist. I love how moist he is, you know? That's
No.
our Moist. They strategize together on what kind of party setup they need, plus what Satsuki needs to do to get ready for it. Afterwards, Satsuki takes a break and decides to call his parents through Skype. He declares he has something important to tell them, and they assume he needs to ask them for money. When Satsuki tells his parents the news about his upcoming marriage, they're shocked and relieved. They decide that they'll visit Satsuki the next day to discuss his marriage plans.
Wow, I was shocked to see how many alt accounts that Mode, one of the characters in the server, has. 7 of them. I'm sure that there are plenty of people in real life that do that as well in the game. I would bet there are people out there that have an alt account for every race that exists in Dragon Quest X at the very least, especially with how many years this game has been around. More than a decade now. It's fun and sad to see Satsuki use Skype to connect with his parents through a video call. Fun because it's what Slime Time used to record all of our episodes with. Sad because Microsoft shut it down. It was an excellent free resource to make long audio or video calls with other people and be able to record them. It was just shut down this past 5th of May. We actually used its video recording feature for the recent live reaction video to the Slime's Adventures video. RIP Skype, you served our podcast well. Now, before I get into Satsuki's parents, I looked up what that Scorpide boss looks like. That's a nasty looking boss. Just putting that out there. From the server, it sounds like quite a difficult boss to take on as well. Now, getting back to Satsuki's parents, it's so funny to see them assume the worst of Satsuki, considering his track record with people in general. The first assumption they made about his potential wife being a 2D waifu is absolutely hilarious. Poor, underestimated Satsuki. And it's sweet to see him realize that his parents worried about him over the years more than he ever knew, that they were working extra hard to leave him some decent money when they passed. These servers of meeting Satsuki and Miyako's families have been very enjoyable. I look forward to seeing Satsuki's parents in person when they come to visit in the next server.
Yeah, I actually laughed out loud a few times during Satsuki's call with his parents.
Oh, that's great.
He's always been such a loner, such a hikikomori, that they were surprised when he got a job. Satsuki meeting an actual woman who wants to marry him is beyond their wildest dreams. Odd that we only get to see the parents as puppets, especially since they don't play Dragon Quest X. I guess the manga's creators wanted to save their real appearances as a treat for the next chapter. As you mentioned, this chapter involves Scorpide again, though it's a little ambiguous about whether Satsuki actually ends up fighting the super boss or not. Satsuki also mentions failing to defeat Regilazo, another super boss. Regilazo has been translated elsewhere as Legirazo. Reading the name in katakana, I would pronounce it as Regirurazo, so the manga's translation is pretty close. Regilazo is an undead boss who looks like a skeleton that wears a spiked turtle shell on its back and also wears the shells for shoulder pauldrons and arm shields. He looks pretty cool.
Ooh, I haven't seen him before. I'll have to go look that up after we're done.
Absolutely. And there's a few colored variants as well. I don't know if they're regular enemies or bosses as well.
Nice.
One thing that tripped me up a bit in this chapter is the use of pronouns. Mode, the player with all the alts, is a guy, but the comic refers to him with they and their numerous times. I know some people prefer to be referred to that way, but as an English teacher, it always throws me off. I guess that's what I get for being pedantic. Anyway, it's a good chapter, and I know we're both looking forward to reading the second half soon.
Now, a little bit of an extra notification for all you viewers out there or listeners. You may have noticed we refer to the Brave Yoshihiko now as the Hero Yoshihiko. We've seen it translated both ways. Even the opening credits refer to it in English as Brave, along with the Season 1 companion book. At least when they're introducing Yoshihiko as a character, you can see Brave kind of pop up in the background.
Yes, so you can. It's very confusing, but if we go by what the official title is at the end of the opening credits and what is actually said, we think Hero is a more accurate representation of the title. They are literally saying Yusha. The U means brave, and the Sha means person. So brave person, the Japanese equivalent of calling someone a hero.
It's how the Japanese refer to the main protagonist heroes in Dragon Quest games as well. Thanks to our fan Sadib for bringing this up.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, us calling the show a different thing worries me a little bit. Hopefully everyone can just roll with it. Like you said, people probably remember the name Yoshihiko most of all. And yeah, they're literally calling him the hero class in the titles, so calling him brave instead, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's one instance where we disagree with the translators. Darn them. And with that, we wrap up this episode of Alltrades DQ Media Abbey. If you want to prepare for our next episode, be sure to watch Season 2, Episodes 10 and 11 of the Yoshihiko, and read Chapters 57 to 59 of Rooming with a Gamer Gal. The Yoshihiko is available with fan subs on the Internet Archive website, and Rooming with a Gamer Gal is available through the Manga Up app, and also that website that I use.
We're a non-profit podcast. We won't hook up your hard-earned gold with fictional 2D waifus when we can offer you you quality content for free. But if you do have some extra gold that's just completely burning a hole in your wallet, pouch, hanging wall sack, or treasure chest, and you would like to donate anything to a website that's been supporting Dragon Quest fans for over 25 years, stop by the Dragon's Den by clicking the link in the show notes. There are several ways to support the Den, including the affiliate links that don't cost you anything extra when making other Dragon Quest purchases, especially the upcoming Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D remake, everybody.
Show us that love, folks. Speaking of which, we have a cool Slime Time t-shirt and an even cooler Alltrades DQ Media Abbey shirt, both designed by our resident artist, Dwayne. And as of recently, we now have stickers.
Stickers!
That's right. See the link for all that good stuff in the show notes.
As part of the Slime Time Extended Universe, or STU, you can direct comments or questions for the podcast on X, Blue Sky, and Instagram at DQ Slime Time.
And you can follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/EastXTwitch. Come watch me play a variety of games every Saturday, kids.
Join in tons of Dragon Quest discussion at the Dragon's Den forums and Discord, and the Dragon Questers and Slime Time Facebook groups, plus the new Dragon Questers Discord.
We'd like to thank everyone that makes this podcast possible, including Woodus, the Dragon's Den, and Ayano. Thanks for coming back to us, you sultry temptress.
Please like, subscribe, and write a review for the podcast.
We'll catch you later, everybody. Don't hate, appreciate.
Time to zoom on out of here.
風がそよいでジャスミンが香る雲が流れてクジラが泳ぐよ芝生に寝転んで君は笑って夕日に染まるゆっくり眠くなる二人は永遠だと信じたいけどいつかは離れ離れにもなるでしょなんてね寂しいこと考えては本気で君を思うどこへも行かないよ君を傷つけるものを私が全部消してあげるどこへも行かないよ君が嬉しいと思うことこの手でたくさん集めてあげる愛してる何も話さない静けさもいい飛行機
This is Gertrude for Slime Time, reminding you all that you must complete your adventure.